I noticed my niece and my nephews upstairs and my grandma, and she was like, I think he killed my baby.
Deasia Freeman got to her mom's house Monday afternoon and walked into an absolute nightmare. With her young niece and nephews hiding in a closet, she made a tragic discovery.
Then once I look to my right, which is what Kwame room at, I noticed a Kwame and Xavier on the floor with a lot of blood, and I called my mom. I came back downstairs. I'm like, Mom, please get here now. They killed my brothers.
Deasia is the only girl and the oldest of 8 siblings, 3 of whom were murdered. 1 2 years ago, the other 2 on Monday. 14-year-old Xavier Barnett and 23-year-old Kwame Stewart were killed by their cousin who had just been released from jail.
I still wake up fighting and seeing this picture in my head of me knowing my brother getting shot in front of me, and then me coming home seeing my 2 brothers on the floor and just looking like they was asleep. They didn't even look like they was gone. They just looked like they was asleep.
Deasia says Kwame painted, cooked, and fixed everything around the house. And Xavier got good grades. He was funny and loved to play with her young children.
It's hard for me to explain to my kids, like, my brothers is gone. Like, they no longer here with us anymore.
She says Kwame would never have expected Eddie to hurt or kill him or anyone. She believes young Xavier tried to intervene.
It's going to be hard to come in bringing my kids knowing that they're not here anymore.
Today's story is on Xavier Barnett and Kwame Stewart, 2 brothers who were killed by their cousin Eddie. That day, they were spending time inside their grandmother's North Minneapolis home on a night that should have felt like a celebration. Eddie Darren Duncan had just gotten out of jail hours earlier, and family members filled the house while children moved through the rooms around them. It was the kind of environment they had all grown up around their entire lives. But Eddie walked out of jail believing people in his own family had betrayed him. Stay with me as we uncover one of the most disturbing family murders North Minneapolis had seen in years, and how one grandmother ended up losing 3 grandsons in a single night. Welcome to Family Crimes TV. I bring you gripping true crime stories, every day centered around family, relationships, and the moments where everything changes. If you're drawn to real cases, dark realities, and the psychology behind crimes within families, subscribe now and like this video as you step deeper into the story with me. North Minneapolis has always carried a different kind of energy from the rest of the city. The neighborhoods are filled with people who have known each other for years, families connected through generations, children growing up around cousins who feel more like siblings than distant relatives. On certain blocks, grandparents still sit watching over the neighborhood while relatives move in and out of homes that have hosted birthdays, cookouts, arguments, celebrations, and mourning, all under the same roof. And inside one of those homes in February of 2026 was a family that had no idea their lives were only hours away from changing forever. At just 14 years old, Xavier Barnett was still in the middle of becoming whoever he was eventually going to be. He was young enough to still carry that restless teenage energy, but old enough for people around him to already see pieces of his personality taking shape. Around family, Xavier came across as playful, energetic, and deeply connected to the people closest to him. He spent time around cousins, siblings, and relatives the way many kids in large families do, constantly surrounded by noise, movement, and people walking in and out of each other's lives every day. Like many teenagers his age, Xavier also lived part of his life online. Social media clips, photos with relatives, moments joking around with family members, normal teenage behavior that never looked unusual while it was happening. Nothing about his life suggested he would eventually become the center of a homicide case that would shock Minneapolis. Xavier still carried the energy that comes with being 14 years old. Most of his life still revolved around family, school, social media, and spending time around the people closest to him in North Minneapolis. He still had years ahead of him that had not yet been lived. Future birthdays, future relationships, future mistakes, future milestones his family still expected him to reach. One of the people he remained closest to was his older brother, Kwame Stewart. Even with the age difference between them, the 2 brothers stayed connected through the same family environment they had grown up around their entire lives. Family gatherings, time inside their grandmother's home, Cousins constantly around, children moving through the house, relatives coming and going. It was the kind of environment where everybody knew each other. At 23 years old, Akwame had already stepped into adulthood. Life carried different responsibilities for him now. But despite getting older, he still remained deeply connected to the same family structure surrounding Xavier and the rest of their relatives. Inside the grandmother's home, Akwame was simply part of the normal rhythm of the family. The grandmother's house itself mattered deeply to the family dynamic. It was more than just an address. It was one of those homes where people constantly gathered. Relatives came throughout the day. Children moved room to room. Family members spent hours talking, eating, arguing, laughing, and simply existing around one another. The environment created familiarity, and familiarity creates comfort. But the stories surrounding Xavier and Akwame could never be separated from their cousin who had grown up around that same environment for years. Eddie Darren Duncan was already familiar with the same relatives, the same homes, and the same North Minneapolis family gatherings long before February 2026. The grandmother's house was not some unfamiliar place he suddenly entered one night. He had spent years around the same people inside that home. Everybody involved already knew each other. As Eddie got older, firearms slowly became part of the image he presented publicly online. Videos and photos connected to his social media showed him posing with guns, handling firearms around friends, and posting content that drew increasing attention across Facebook. Over time, the online image surrounding him started becoming more reckless and harder to separate from real-life trouble. Then during the early morning hours of May 17, 2025, everything escalated. Near Highway 181, Robbinsdale police spotted a vehicle speeding and running a stoplight. Officers attempted to stop the car, but instead of pulling over, the driver accelerated away. The pursuit quickly intensified as speeds climbed close to 90 miles per hour before the vehicle eventually crashed and rolled over. But even after the crash, the situation still was not over. Eddie got out and ran from the wrecked vehicle on foot, while officers chased after him. When police searched the crash car afterward, they recovered a black Glock handgun equipped with an extended magazine holding 29 rounds, along with an auto-sear attachment, commonly known as a Glock switch. The modification turned the handgun into the type of weapon capable of firing automatically. Even after police recovered the modified Glock from the crashed car, the case did not immediately move forward publicly. Months passed after the chase, while Eddie continued moving through Minneapolis and remaining active online. Then on January 30th, 2026, the warrant connected to the firearm case was finally issued. Once news about the warrant started spreading online, Eddie appeared to watch the attention surrounding his own name in real time. Wanted posts and news coverage connected to the firearm case started circulating across Facebook. Instead of disappearing from social media, Eddie reposted some of the wanted images and coverage about himself directly onto his own page, while police searched for him. The behavior immediately caught people's attention online, because the same man officers were actively trying to locate was now reposting the manhunt onto his own Facebook account. Then on February 15, 2026, the warrant finally caught up with him. Exactly how Eddie was ultimately located and taken into custody never became one of the most publicly detailed parts of the case. But his arrest suddenly pushed the firearm investigation fully back into the court system, only days before everything else that would later happen. Once Eddie entered custody, prosecutors moved forward with the firearm case connected to the Glock switch and the pursuit from the previous year. The case immediately drew attention because the weapon recovered from the crash modified into an automatic firearm. As court proceedings continued, discussions surrounding competency evaluations and mental health examinations also entered the process. Hearings continued moving forward while the court attempted to determine whether Eddie was mentally competent to proceed through the criminal case. Some relatives reportedly felt uneasy about the direction Eddie's life was moving. Concerns surrounding firearms, behavior, and emotional instability appeared to quietly exist beneath the surface. But inside families, people often struggle to fully separate themselves from relatives, even when problems become obvious. Blood ties create emotional conflict. People hope situations improve. They hope somebody calms down. They hope tension fades before anything irreversible happens. Then on February 23, 2026, Eddie appeared in court again. By the end of the hearing, bond was posted for him, allowing him to walk back out of custody later that same day. The release quickly became one of the most heavily discussed parts of the entire case afterward, because the competency evaluation process still remained part of the proceedings. Still, by the afternoon of February 23rd, Eddie Darren Duncan was no longer inside jail. Eddie Darren Duncan walked out of court after his mother helped bail him out. The situation itself already carried emotional tension beneath the surface. Eddie believed somebody close to him had betrayed him. With that belief, he planned on returning directly back into the same family environment where relatives continued gathering together. Meanwhile, family members were left watching the situation develop from the outside. As night settled over Minneapolis, normal family life continued moving inside the grandmother's home. Children remained inside the residence. Relatives came and went throughout the night. Xavier and Akwame spent time inside the house together. Conversations continued between family members while the atmosphere still carried the familiarity everybody had known for years. But underneath the normal movement of the night, emotional tension still quietly existed. Eddie's release earlier that day remained part of the atmosphere surrounding the family. Even without open confrontation happening immediately, the emotional weight connected to everything surrounding him had not disappeared. And as the hours passed deeper into the night, the emotional energy inside the home slowly began shifting. But sometime later that night, the atmosphere inside the house completely changed. The atmosphere inside the house completely changed when Eddie Darren Duncan arrived back at the grandmother's home later that night. Up until that moment, the residence had still felt like a normal family environment. Relatives remained inside different parts of the home. But once Eddie entered the home, the emotional tension that had quietly existed beneath the surface finally rose into the open. At some point inside the house, a confrontation broke out between Eddie and members of the family. The exact words exchanged inside the residence were never fully known publicly. But whatever began inside that home escalated quickly. The atmosphere shifted from normal family conversation into panic within moments. Then Eddie produced a firearm. Inside the same home where children and relatives were gathered, gunfire suddenly erupted. 14-year-old Xavier Barnett was shot inside the residence. His older brother, 23-year-old Akwame Stewart, was also shot during the violence. The grandmother's home instantly transformed from a family gathering place into a scene of chaos and terror. Relatives inside the residence began reacting immediately. Children were suddenly screaming and running through the home, while adults tried to understand what had just happened. Panic spread room to room as family members realized Xavier and Akwame had both been hit. Some relatives attempted to move toward the victims, while others tried protecting the children still inside the residence. The emotional shock inside the home was immediate. Only moments earlier, everybody had still been gathered together as family. Now relatives were staring at two cousins lying wounded inside the same house they had all grown up visiting throughout their lives. Emergency calls began pouring out from the residence as panic overwhelmed the home. Voices filled with fear tried explaining to dispatchers that a shooting had happened inside the family house. The confusion was intensified by the emotional reality that the suspected gunman was not a stranger. It was somebody connected to the same family standing inside the home only moments earlier. After the shooting, Eddie Darren Duncan fled the residence. A relative will later appear with a gun to confront him, but Eddie was gone. Behind him, family members were left trying to process what had just happened, while chaos consumed the home. Relatives moved frantically between rooms. Children cried as adults attempted to comfort them while simultaneously dealing with the horror unfolding around them. Some family members reportedly struggled to even fully understand the reality that Xavier and Akwame had both been shot by their own cousin. Outside, the quiet North Minneapolis neighborhood was beginning to fill with flashing lights. Within minutes, police vehicles flooded toward the residence after emergency dispatchers received multiple calls reporting gunfire inside the home. Officers arrived to find devastated relatives outside the house, many of them emotional, screaming, crying, and trying to explain what had happened. Inside the residence, officers discovered Xavier Barnett and Akwame Stewart suffering from gunshot wounds. The emotional weight inside the house was overwhelming. Children remained traumatized by the violence they had just witnessed, while relatives stood outside trying to hold themselves together as emergency responders moved throughout the scene. Meanwhile, law enforcement rapidly began identifying Eddie Darren Duncan as the suspect. Alerts spread across surrounding agencies, while officers worked to locate him before the situation escalated even further. The search quickly intensified throughout the Minneapolis area as investigators tracked possible movements connected to Eddie after he fled the residence. Throughout the night, fear and tension spread across parts of the community as officers continued searching for him. Back at the grandmother's home, relatives remained trapped inside the emotional nightmare unfolding around them. Some family members were still trying to comfort children, while others struggled to comprehend how an ordinary family gathering had collapsed into violence so quickly. The emotional devastation surrounding the home deepened as reality slowly settled in. But before the night finally came to an end, the manhunt for Eddie Darren Duncan would also reach its conclusion. Hours after the shootings inside North Minneapolis, officers eventually located Eddie in nearby Brooklyn Center. Law enforcement moved in while attempting to make contact with him. But the encounter quickly escalated. During the confrontation, Eddie was still armed. Officers repeatedly attempted to control the situation, but the encounter continued intensifying within moments. Then Eddie opened fire on them. Police returned fire during the confrontation, striking Eddie Darren Duncan. He died at the scene. And just like that, the same family that had already lost Xavier and Akwame was suddenly forced to process another devastating reality. Before the night was over, 3 cousins connected to the same family were now dead.
Violence today. Police say a boy and a man are dead after being shot by another man believed to be their cousin. It all unfolded inside a North Minneapolis home while 4 other children and a grandmother were there as well. Police say the gunman then fled to Brooklyn Center, where he was shot and killed by police. We've been following this story from the very beginning. We have team coverage right now. Our So Young Kim is standing by in Brooklyn Center, where the police shooting occurred. But first, our Maury Glover is live in North Minneapolis, where this tragedy all began. Maury.
Well, Minneapolis police just cleared the scene here a few moments ago, but it was a devastating day for a family here in North Minneapolis who lost 3 family members in one afternoon.
The police presence was large. There was people all over. I saw the captain and a bunch of police coming out of the house and the grandmother, and it's just heartbreaking.
Now, Minneapolis police say the 24-year-old suspect who was arrested about a week ago on warrants for fleeing police and having a modified handgun was released from the Hennepin County Jail today. Police say he came to a relative's house near 43rd and Irving, where he shot and killed 2 of his cousins, one of them 23-year-old, the other 14 years old. Now, investigators say the suspect's grandmother was in the home with 4 young children at the time of the shooting, and the suspect may have believed his cousins had something to do with his arrest.
The family is very distraught. Grandmother with children in the home, that's obviously supposed to be a very safe place. So I can't imagine.
As news spread throughout Minneapolis, emotional shock deepened across the family and community. For relatives, the grief became almost impossible to describe because the tragedy carried multiple layers at once. Xavier was only 14 years old. Akwame had died beside his younger brother. And the person accused of killing them had also grown up within the same family structure.
A wild ending to a horrific chain of events. Brooklyn Center police responded to a man waving a gun and ended up exchanging gunfire with him, killing 23-year-old Eddie Duncan. Investigators believe Duncan went to Brooklyn Center after killing two of his cousins in Minneapolis, ages 23 and just 14. Something family and the community is trying to comprehend, especially a neighbor and youth sports coach.
He was definitely a happy kid. Like I said, I just can't wrap my head around it because he never really gave issues to anybody.
Questions are swirling now over what could have led Duncan to fire at his family. Eddie Duncan had been in jail after he was picked up on a warrant that stemmed from an incident in May involving Robbinsdale police. Dash cam video shows Duncan was pulled over for speeding and running a red light. But a short time later, he hit the gas, taking police on a pursuit. Eventually, Duncan crashed and rolled his car, but he crawled out of it and then ran from the scene and wasn't found. Inside his car, though, police pulled out a Glock with an auto sear that makes it fire like a machine gun. An extended magazine was also found with 29 rounds, and there was one in the chamber. After Duncan was finally charged and a warrant was issued for his arrest earlier this month, his Facebook page shows a post where he hasn't slept in 4 days. Then on February 15th, he appeared to be up all night, posting minute to minute and repeatedly posting his mugshot that showed up on a social media site. Duncan was arrested on February 16th. A competency evaluation was ordered, and the judge set bail at $35,000. He was released on February 23rd at 12:41 p.m. Police say he went to his cousin's house about 3 hours later and fired those fatal shots. Many finding it hard to understand a 14-year-old suddenly gone.
Somebody as fun as him, with the smile he has, you wouldn't expect that.
Now, a lot of people have been questioning that $35,000 bail that was set, or bond that was set. The Hennepin County's Attorney's Office saying this afternoon that that is actually higher than they normally ask for with the charges that were against Duncan. So they did set it for $35,000 with conditions, and he did bail out for that amount. Now, he only spent a few days in jail, and then he was subsequently released because of that bail. He was released yesterday around 12:41, and then again he did kill, or allegedly kill, his cousins just a couple of hours later. The BCA is investigating the scene here, the shooting here involving Brooklyn Center police. Minneapolis police are investigating the one on the north side.
In the days afterward, grieving relatives began publicly expressing anger, heartbreak, and frustration surrounding everything that had happened. Many family members questioned how Eddie had been released earlier that same day, despite the concerns already surrounding him. Some openly expressed feelings that warning signs had existed long before the murders happened. Others spoke emotionally about the pain of losing multiple relatives in one night, while children inside the home were left traumatized by what they witnessed.
All failed us. We got 2 innocent lives that's gone for no reason. Don't do nothing to nobody.
Family members still searching for answers as court documents provide new details in a deadly police shooting that followed the killing of 2 cousins. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, we're learning more about the lives lost in a North Minneapolis shooting Monday. Family tell us that 14-year-old Xavier Barnett and 23-year-old Aquame Stewart were killed by their own cousin. A search warrant spells out just how close that shooter came to claiming more lives.
2 brothers, loved and full of promise, gone. The family says this tragedy could have been prevented. They blame the justice system for allowing bail and their own relatives that paid it.
I wish I could just get one more phone call and them asking me like where I'm at.
One more conversation, one more chance. That's all Deaisha Freeman wants.
Well, you know my brothers would give you their last.
Police say Monday, 14-year-old Xavier Barnett and 23-year-old Aquame Stewart were shot and killed.
Like, why? Like, why did you do this to my family?
The accused gunman, their cousin, Eddie Duncan.
We grew up with Eddie, and nothing was never like wrong with Eddie. So like this just was unexpected, like to take 2 innocent family members.
Court records show Duncan was released on bail Monday despite a pending psychological evaluation. Freeman says Duncan's family saw the warning signs and still bailed him out.
If y'all knew that he wanted to harm you all, why go bail him out of jail?
The Hennepin County Attorney's Office says they noted Eddie Duncan was a public safety risk and asked for a high bail, much higher than a typical request. Do you feel like the justice system failed y'all?
Yes, they did. They all failed us. We got 2 innocent lives that's gone for no reason.
This family has already buried another brother to gun violence, and they'd never imagined facing this kind of loss again.
We didn't even grieve over my oldest brother yet. It did 2 more brothers at once.
But even in the heartbreak, it's the memories of the good days carrying them through.
These my happy brothers. Like, I just miss their smile.
One phrase especially continued echoing throughout conversations surrounding the case. They all failed us. The statement reflected the emotional frustration many relatives carried while trying to understand how the situation had reached this point. Meanwhile, memorials honoring Xavier and Akwame began appearing throughout the community. Candles, balloons, photos, flowers, and handwritten tributes slowly filled gathering spaces as loved ones tried to mourn 2 brothers whose lives had ended inside the same home where they once felt safe. For many people across Minneapolis, the case felt especially disturbing because it shattered the idea that family automatically meant protection. The violence had not come from strangers entering the home. It came from somebody raised around the same relatives, the same gatherings, and the same family history. And long after the police vehicles disappeared from that North Minneapolis block, the emotional damage left behind never truly disappeared with them. Xavier Barnett was only 14 years old when his life ended inside his grandmother's home. Akwame Stewart died beside his younger brother in the same house where their family once gathered together normally. Children who survived the violence were left carrying memories no child should ever experience. And one family was permanently destroyed from within by somebody they had spent years loving as their own. In the end, one of the hardest realities surrounding the case was how normal the night originally seemed. A grandmother's home, cousins together, children inside the house, family moving room to room the way they always had. And then suddenly, everything was gone. Thank you for watching Family Crimes TV. If you've been following these gripping true crime stories with me, make sure you subscribe because I bring you powerful, thought-provoking crime videos every single day. If this case stayed with you, there's more waiting for you here. See you in the next one.